Hey guys, Nate Story here with Bright Agritech, and today we're going to talk about buying grow lights and clearly understanding your situation and how your situation basically can lead you to buy one or another grow light. So there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all solution. Every different problem is different and every problem needs a different solution. There are some products out there that are kind of a fits most type solution, but almost everyone is different. And so before you buy a grow light or commit to a particular grow light, make sure you think through your situation very, very carefully and understand clearly the problem that you're trying to solve. So you want to start off by looking really carefully at your problems, and your problems aren't necessarily obvious. You might think, my problem is I need to light my crop, but that's not your only problem. Your problem could be, I only have this big of a budget. Your problem could be, I have too much heat. Your problem could be, I have too little heat. Your problem could be, I'm going to have way more money next year than I have this year, so I'm going to want a different kind of light next year. What do I do this year, right? Those are kind of problems that are the real problems. So lights produce a lot of heat. It doesn't matter whether you're using an LED light or a traditional HID or high intensity discharge light. The reality is that ultimately you're going to be generating a lot of heat. And what that represents is a lot of wasted electricity. Now, the way I like to think about it is if you're doing like supplemental lighting in a greenhouse or something like that, yes, it's expensive heat, but at least you can use that waste heat from the lights to help heat your greenhouse, right? But if you're indoors, then that heat can become a problem because unless you can get rid of it, it costs you a lot more money than to deal with the heat indoors. And so thinking about heat is kind of one of those things where you need to understand whether it's going to be a benefit to you or whether it's going to be a negative thing to your growing. Some good examples of really kind of approaching this, all of these different problems is, some friends of mine I've been talking to lately, they have a greenhouse, they have a limited budget this year. They want to do LED lighting, but they just have kind of a limited budget for lighting on the front end. So, they're in an environment that gets a little bit cooler, a little bit colder during the winter. And I actually encourage them to go HID. So I encourage them to buy high pressure sodium and sell it and use it in their greenhouses. So these things are growing, they're producing good light. Their electricity costs are higher, but it's like a 1 year thing, right? Because they can turn around. There's a community of growers in their area that they can sell their lights to and get most of the cost back, buy LEDs and put those in down the road when they have more disposable income. So that's kind of a great example. They've got a greenhouse. They can use high pressure sodium to heat the greenhouse and provide light during the winter, and really they're mostly just heating when the lights are on anyway. So that works out quite well. And it's kind of a temporary thing. There's a secondary market for these things, and so it's not like a sunk cost, right? You can get some money back out of them. That's an example of a scenario where they're thinking about long-term, short-term, and kind of all of those things within the context of a winter greenhouse. So when you're thinking about your CapEx and your OpEx, one is capital expense, one's operating expense. People usually try to optimize for one or the other, or try to find some balance, right? Usually if you're optimizing for your operating expense, you're going to spend more money on the front end. You're going to buy something like an LED, which consumes, say, half as much electricity to produce the same amount of usable light for the plants. So it's going to cost you a lot more this year, but over the next 5 years, that thing's going to pay itself off and reduce energy consumption. So that's an example of optimizing for OpEx. Now, if you're optimizing for CapEx, which is like, we just don't have any money right now, but we need this light, then going with something that's more traditional like an HPS or a metal halide light is sometimes a better option because they're available, they can be had inexpensively, and they're darn effective. A lot of people have been growing under them for a long time. Now, the thing to remember is you are going to be generating a lot of heat, and ultimately in the long run, you need to understand the cost of that heat. If you're in a cold environment, maybe it's very, very cheap to get rid of that heat, but if you're in a hot environment, that can be a problem. So the type of lighting is another important consideration, and there are a bunch of types out there, but the big dominant ones are HID and LED lights, right? And in the HID camp, we have metal halide, we have high pressure sodium. In the LED camp, we have tons of different brands now. I tend to anymore separate them out into kind of like bars, fixtures, and then water-cooled versus air-cooled. But the type of fixture that you choose should be solving a specific problem for you. So if you choose, to optimize CapEx, you're probably going to end up with an HID fixture. If you're going to optimize OpEx, you're going to end up most likely with an LED fixture. And the lifetime of those things, the upfront cost, whether or not you can get a loan to cover them, what those loan payments are, all of these things kind of factor in to that decision as to what type of lighting to purchase. You need to very carefully consider the amount of light that you need. You know how much each fixtures can deliver, essentially. You know that there is going to be, the upside is the amount of light it produces, the downside is the amount of heat that it produces, right? And so we're talking about the amount of light. You know what your crop needs. If you're growing a very light-intensive crop, let's say tomatoes or something like that, right? Basil, right? Something that you're driving at very, very high light intensities, you're of course going to need more fixtures or different types of fixtures compared to just growing lettuce, right? Which needs a lot less light. And so that's something to really think carefully about. Now you can get the same effects out of HID as LED and LED as HID. That's just the reality. The thing to keep in mind there, though, is of course all of the other peripheral stuff, the cost of it, how many fixtures you're going to have to put in, how intensive you have to get it to get the coverage you need, and the intensities that you need. So that is definitely something that you need to be thinking about on the front end. So we haven't talked about this stuff yet, but in the next video we're going to talk about some of the metrics that you use for evaluating lights. Now it's ultimately it ends up being fairly subjective, right? Because we can run down through cost per watt, we can run through PPFD, we can run through all of the different coverage maps, all of these different things for these different lighting types. But at the end of the day, we're going to be talking about things like maintenance labor. We're going to be talking about light quality. We're going to be talking about the user experience, right? So there's going to be some subjective elements there. But by and large, we can nail down the big ones, which are things like the cost per watt, the amount of heat produced per watt of input, which tells us the efficiency of the light. We can talk about things like whether it's a fixture or a bar, how it's oriented, how it's set up, and all of these things can help us to make really nice objective decisions before we start digging into things like warranties and the user experience. So this is an overview of all the things that go into a decision when it comes to buying lights. This will be the first video in a series and a playlist that we're going to put together for you guys. And in the meantime, if you want to do a little homework, check out the free lighting guide. We'll include a link below. Leave questions for us and check out the Upstart University course. We put together a lighting course on Upstart University that has some really great information there for beginning growers who are trying to better understand lighting and how it all works. So check that stuff out, and as always, please subscribe.